Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're diving into a really fascinating concept straight from clinical mental health research. We're going to look at how simple, everyday acts of creativity act as a literal biological reset button for our totally stressed out brains. That's right, we're unpacking the hard science of exactly why making things actually helps us make sense of ourselves. Let's just go ahead and address the elephant in the room, that sheer, overwhelming exhaustion so many of us feel every single day. Look, if you find yourself shutting down, reacting instantly to minor things, or just kind of withdrawing, I need you to know this isn't because you're weak. Absolutely not. It happens because your internal resources are just completely tapped out. You're simply spending way more emotional energy than you actually have. Now, you might be thinking, well, hey, I don't paint portraits or write poetry, so this isn't really for me, right? But here's the absolute truth. You really don't need to be some master artist. The urge to make sense of our messy feelings through expression is this deeply ingrained universal human drive. In those quiet little moments between stress and basic survival, your mind naturally reaches for a way to process what you're feeling. So, let's kick things off with our first big idea, the concept of a daily emotional budget, and how we actually measure our mental capacity. To really wrap our heads around our mental bandwidth, I want you to think of your emotional energy just like a bank account. Imagine waking up every single morning with exactly $100 in your emotional budget for the day. And that is it. That's all the energy you have to spend. Every single task, every conversation, every unexpected responsibility you face, it's all drawing from that exact same $100 pool. So the crucial takeaway here is that every single stressor is a withdrawal. Just navigating brutal morning traffic might cost you $10. Covering for a coworker, that might cost $15. And if you're continuously spending, say, $180 on a $100 budget, your brain absolutely panics and goes into protective survival mode. You desperately need a way to make deposits. Simple, everyday creative acts, stuff like doodling, taking an intentional walk, or just jotting down some thoughts. These are exactly how you deposit funds back into that emotional account and finally restore your balance. Okay, moving right along, let's look at your brain on art and dive into the actual neuroscience of creation. We all know we need these emotional deposits, right? But how do they actually work? To answer that, we really need to look under the hood. We're going to check out the specific neural networks that light up when we stop just reacting to the world around us and start actually making something within it. Now, this is super cool. Normally, your default mode network, which is the part of your brain handling daydreaming, imagination, all those what-if scenarios, and your executive control network, which is all about hardcore focus and evaluation, well, they are basically in a constant tug of war. They constantly interrupt each other. But when you engage in artistic expression, they suddenly team up. You imagine a feeling with the default mode network, and then you instantly organize and shape it using the executive control network. Your brain literally stops spinning in circles and shifts into highly constructive processing. This awesome collaboration forces multiple regions of your brain to work together in perfect harmony. Think about it like a symphony. You pull these chaotic, raw emotions from the limbic system, you connect them to your past memories using the hippocampus, and then you structure the whole thing into a manageable, integrated experience using your prefrontal cortex. You aren't just doing some fun little craft activity, you are literally, neurologically integrating your thoughts and feelings. And all of this harmony causes a massive, immediate chemical shift in your body. Because these brain regions are finally playing nice with each other, your stress hormone, cortisol, just drops like a rock. At the exact same time, your brain gets flooded with dopamine, which cranks up your motivation and pleasure, alongside a healthy dose of oxytocin, which signals connection and safety. It's wild. You end up feeling totally energized and perfectly calm, all at the exact same time. Now that we've got the chemistry down, let's look at the science of different mediums and how specific types of art can heal us. Let's break down how this works across a few different forms of expression, starting with something as simple as drawing. Before we even develop language as kids, we use color and shape to express ourselves. And honestly, that capacity never leaves us in adulthood. When your emotions are just way too complex or honestly too messy for pure logic, drawing acts as a sort of visual translator. It completely bypasses that exhausting need to try and figure it out using words. Tactile arts, stuff like coloring, painting, or even making a collage, they heavily engage your sensory awareness. Just the simple, repetitive motion of coloring or the smooth glide of paint on a canvas completely anchors you in the present moment. It's a real game changer because it significantly lowers the intensity of your overthinking, Why? Because your hands are taking the lead when your mind is just too tired to think anymore. Now, writing works in a similar but slightly different way. By forcing you to link your raw feelings with actual reasoning, expressive writing creates this incredible psychological distance. It takes all that overwhelming internal tension, pulls it right out of your head, and traps it safely on a piece of paper. You can finally just sit back and observe it, rather than feeling like you're drowning in it. But hey, what if you just don't want to use your hands at all? Well, since emotions are actually stored physically in the body, like when you get those super tight shoulders or that heavy feeling in your chest, things like rhythmic walking or just moving to music are unbelievably effective. The steady, repetitive pace of these activities directly activates your parasympathetic nervous system. That's your body's built-in rest and digest mode, and it physically tells your brain, hey, we're out of danger now. Okay, so how do we apply this? Let's talk about building a creative ritual and literally wiring the brain for calm. So the big question, how on earth do we make these incredible neurological benefits last for the long haul? The secret here relies entirely on neuroplasticity. You see, the brain absolutely thrives on patterns. By committing to a regular, consistent creative ritual, you are quite literally physically training your nervous system. You're strengthening those neural pathways so that your brain naturally learns to default to calm, instead of going into full-blown panic mode the second you face stress. And I want to show you just how accessible this really is. You absolutely don't need to be an expert, and you certainly don't need hours of free time. Just try these simple steps. Set a short timer, maybe 10 or 20 minutes, pick an activity, and then give yourself total permission to just process without any judgment whatsoever. Remember, the goal here is not to produce some museum-worthy masterpiece. The goal is simply presence. It's just about expression. Honestly, the real power isn't in how beautifully you create something. It is strictly in the consistency of the habit. Making those weekly deposits back into your emotional bank account is what will actually shift your day-to-day life. What starts out feeling like a bit of an effort eventually becomes this incredibly familiar automatic release valve for all your daily stress. Now, to ensure this actually sticks and becomes a lasting habit, you've got to establish a sanctuary. This could be a physical space, like, say, a cozy chair by a window with some great natural light, or even just a mental space, like putting on a specific calming playlist. When you repeatedly return to the exact same conditions for your creative ritual, it acts as a massive cue to your nervous system. Your brain recognizes that specific environment and instantly goes, okay, we're safe, we can finally soften up and let our guard down. As we start to wrap things up here, I really want to emphasize something absolutely crucial. You do not have to earn rest, and you definitely do not have to prove your worth by constantly being productive. Engaging in creative expression is really just a daily, gentle return to yourself. Think of it as essential emotional maintenance. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought as we close out today's explainer. Now that you know the hard science behind how art physically heals and resets your brain, how are you going to reclaim your peace of mind today? What small, completely imperfect deposit are you going to make into your emotional bank account? Seriously, get out there, grab a pen, go for a quiet walk, do some doodling, and give your mind that break it so deeply deserves.